Let's face it, as a member of the high society known as gamers, you're one of two people. You're either an RPG guy, or you're not. Luckily, I happen to be one of them, and 2024 is looking absolutely stacked in terms of RPGs. So much so that today, I'm going to be talking about the 5 that I think are guaranteed to be the best of the best. So sit back, relax, grab a marketable plushie or two, because we're already starting off with a verified banger. Starting this list off insanely strong as a game I've been following only pretty recently, but it's far from a newcomer in terms of raw status. If you're familiar with Japanese mobile gaming, Granblue Fantasy is a name that needs no introduction. It's an insanely huge franchise with tons of character goods, a huge fanwork scene, a fighting game spin-off series, and a fully produced anime adaptation. I'm also just gonna gloss over the whole core game in the franchise being, oops, that's definitely a gacha hellscape thing, but it's all thankfully about to change very soon, thanks to Granblue Fantasy Relink, the first full non-spin-off mainline game in the Granblue IP with actual gameplay. I can't believe that's a real sentence I just said. Despite the game's origins though, this thing is no joke. Originally given to the legendary Platinum Games to develop before being handed back to Side Games Osaka to be finished in-house, Granblue Fantasy Relink is said to be one of the biggest original action-adventure RPGs we've seen in a few years, no questions asked. What this game does for me is that I'm already a really big fan of the characters in the world, having just been a fan of the franchise already, but I mean, even pre-existing works aside, the game's just beautiful. Granblue to me has always really had a kind of distinct feeling 2D, almost cel-shaded art style with lots of cool line work and highlights that make it feel more like you're playing through something you'd see in a light novel cover, and heck, they translated it perfectly to 3D once already with the fighting game, and now with this one, it looks like they're using that next-gen hardware to take it a step further, which I really love. The directing in the game's camera work and cutscenes makes it feel like a spectacle of playing through an anime OVA. It's a feeling that's hard to put into words, but it's just a vibe I got watching gameplay of various demos that have been released over the years. And obviously, with the framework set by the Platinum Games, the developers behind the insanely smooth and refined Nier Automata and Bayonetta series, it's safe to say that on top of this just being one of the best looking upcoming RPGs visually, the combat and exploration look just as snappy and satisfying as you'd expect. I can't even go into all we know about this thing considering it's just evolved so much over what'll soon be an 8-year development cycle, just because there's so much to look at and talk about, but that's the basic gist. Granblue Fantasy Relink is a game I'll definitely be playing on launch 100%. Completely jumping from a game we know almost too much about to one we really didn't have any info on until recently, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Normally here, I'd say something like, this is a game in the Final Fantasy series, because that's what the name says, and it only makes sense. But what I'm going to say instead is, Rebirth is the latest upcoming entry in the Final Fantasy VII series. I say that because... And you know what? Man, just keep giving me more. Final Fantasy has been one of my favorite series ever for as long as I can remember, and especially Final Fantasy VII at that. So it only makes sense that 7 Remake Integrate is just actually my favorite game on PS5 right now, and with the way Rebirth is looking, it's about to slide in right next to it. The reason why, for anyone out of the loop on the whole Final Fantasy VII Extended Cinematic Meta-series, aka You Have Sex, the Final Fantasy Remake is being split into a trilogy of 3 different games. So where Remake Integrate just covered the first third, this one's covering the second third after leaving Midgard. And just due to the nature of how the original game went and what matches to this part, there looks to be so much extra content to do besides just the main story. From what I've seen, the battle system's been expanded a bit, and traversing the world using chocobos looks so insanely fun, but where things get really crazy with this next part is the expansion of optional content. It looks like there's almost a semi-open world take on the original, which I think is just super fitting, and there's loads of optional quests, battles, and just stuff to do outside of the main story, which we've seen in some of the recent demos. Not to mention, tons of people are theorizing that the Remake trilogy might be introducing an alternate timeline as the remix, which just has me even more excited to try this thing out. And even if it's not anything too different, just getting to see how they've expanded what's already there and getting more interactions with this awesome cast of characters is dope as is. From what little gameplay has come out and from what other YouTubers who have gotten up with the demo are showing, I think it's safe to say that there's a lot to be excited for, and anything Final Fantasy related is already enough to make my day, so honestly, February can't come soon enough. But by far the most mysterious and probably the weirdest game on this list is Metaphor ReFantazio. From the creators of the Megami Tensei and Persona series, Metaphor ReFantazio is Atlus's newest IP, one that we've really only gotten a single trailer of in the 8 years of development this thing has had. Originally announced as Project ReFantasy, it was meant to be Atlus's take on a more traditional RPG fantasy-like story, which has always kind of made me think they were going to be taking a more Dragon Quest or even close to a Zelda approach in terms of thematics and story. Hell, we had no idea what the gameplay was said to be like going into this, so they could have completely turned it on its head from what we're used to with turn-based systems and just changed it up to something like a real-time or tactical combat system. But oddly enough, the trailer of Metaphor ReFantazio actually looks a lot closer to Megami Tensei than I was expecting. There's just this weird kind of reverse isekai thing they have going on with all of these high fantasy creatures suddenly getting just dropped in what looks like Japan, and the battle system is basically a different implementation of the press turn system. I mean, there's literally a Persona calendar system in this thing too. This is definitely still an Atlus game through and through. But despite everything, it still looks and sounds like a really unique aesthetic for an RPG, especially a full production from Atlus. I mean, there's mythological monsters apart from the SMT demons and tons of fantasy archetypes for the party members drawn in Soejima's iconic style, and the backgrounds and UI literally look like they've been painted into the game's world, with the UI looking almost stylized in the same way as Persona, but with a more fantastical twist. Like, it's just really nice to look at alone. So already you have something that just kind of can't be replicated anywhere else. So yeah, even though we know like kind of nothing about this one, it's still set for a 2024 release, which means hopefully we start to get some more trailers or info out soon. I'm just really interested in seeing how this project turns out. Did someone ask for another Atlus banger? No? Too bad. Persona 3, one of the most iconic RPGs of all time, now finally being updated and brought up to the technical and graphical level of Persona 5, which is one of the best looking and most refined, gameplay-wise, RPGs of all time too. It's just a dream come true. For those of you who haven't experienced it for yourself yet, Persona 3's story is pretty widely regarded as one of the best out of the trio out of the modern Persona games, and having played 3 Portable, 4 Golden, and 5 Original, I can definitely see where they're going with that. Although Persona 5 originally got me into the wider Megaton series, I thought the story was fine. Sure, it was a little goofy at times, but it was still a fun ride to follow along with. The parts of Persona 5 I enjoyed the most, though, were the battle system and social links by far. It just felt like there was so much detail and depth to what you could do in between the dungeons that I hadn't really seen in any other RPG up to that point. Needless to say, jumping straight to Persona 3 Portable was a rough transition. Portable, in comparison, feels a lot more like a visual novel with a press turn simulator just kind of thrown in there sometimes. Don't get me wrong, I definitely still enjoyed it, but with most of the game's content and spectacle reduced to just 2D events and text boxes, it definitely felt like a lot less of a memorable experience than I think it could have been. Sure, I could have played through the original version or FES just as easily, but having little to no control over your party members was just a deal breaker for me. And say what you want about Tartarus, but I'm sorry, these rooms are just boring. You're literally walking through the same 7 boxes over and over again for 30 floors straight until you finally get to the content. Oh sweet, it's Persona 3's dungeons! There's just no gameplay here. But luckily, that's all about to change. Persona 4 did a lot to fix the monotony in the dungeon crawling, and Persona 5 mastered that formula with the design of palaces, and now it looks like we're getting the same sort of approach, but now applied to randomly generated dungeons like in the original. So yeah, it's safe to say that 3 Reload's fixing pretty much every problem I have with playing through Portable, and now bringing it up to speed with Persona 5 in terms of presentation and gameplay. You can bet this game is going to eat up so much of my time next year, and I can't wait for it. Despite some of the parts of the original which haven't aged so well, all of the Persona games I've played are still top tier in my head, so this is like taking a game that's already an A rank all the way up to an S. Even if you haven't played the original, this is definitely an RPG you won't want to miss. Before I get to the last game on this list, there's 3 honorable mentions I want to very briefly include. While they don't really have that much to look at or talk about, I'm still looking forward to playing them when they come out, with Persona 5 Tactica, Song of Nunu, and Deca Police. Persona 5 Tactica is said to be the first tactical RPG entry in the Persona series, the genre of which I'm starting to get really into recently with a certain game that I'll leave for its own video, but yeah, you already know I love Persona, it's stylish, it's got tactics, looks like a fun smaller addition to the series. Song of Nunu is an upcoming game in the League of Legends universe, but set around one of my favorite character duos, that being Nunu and his Yeti Willump. We don't really know like anything about this one yet, besides the fact that it's just a single player story about these guys. I mean, it definitely doesn't fit in the same category of RPG as the rest of these games do, but you know, they're kind of goofy, so I'll let it slide. Lastly is Deca Police, which looks like a more chibi take on the same kind of future cyber police aesthetic that Astral Chain had going on with it. I've just always wanted there to be a sequel or like a spiritual successor to that IP, since it really just seemed like a Platinum Games one-off for the Switch, and while this game looks to be pretty different in a lot of ways, especially the combat, just that same kind of setting and the general art style that the game's got going for it is enough to get me hyped. On top of featuring one of my favorite voice actors in the main role, sign me up. But of course, this list would be incomplete without talking about one of the coolest looking games to have been revealed as of late that I haven't seen get enough coverage at all, and that is none other than Black Myth Wukong. I've made it a goal of mine to get into playing through the Soulsborne series and other Souls-like games just because I've always kind of been interested in them and they're more unlike any other kind of action games I've played up till now. I actually started with Code Vein of all games, which has been an experience so far, but pretty soon I'm planning on jumping into Bloodborne and Elden Ring, and it looks like next year I have yet another game to add to my list. Developed by Game Science, Black Myth Wukong is an upcoming Souls-like that's based directly on Journeys of the West, a classic story in the middle of the Chinese mythos with so many cool creatures, locations, characters, and lore, and here it's just all brought to life in possibly the craziest use of next-gen graphics I've seen to date. Like, I'm not a person who usually gets excited over how realistic a game can look. I could honestly care less about how many individual monkey hairs they can fit on Wukong's left ass cheek, but I'm gonna be honest, this game is just f***ing beautiful. It's like a mix of hyper-realistic settings, somehow perfectly blended with stylized character designs. The mood and spectacle go crazy here, with sparks flying out of like every hit, and almost paint-like strokes coming from shockwaves and larger hits, with the environment and details just giving this game's atmosphere kind of a hyper-detailed, gritty feel. It's honestly hard for me to put into words just how good this game looks, and the artistic direction they've taken here. And obviously from all the boss fights we've seen so far, it looks like they've absolutely nailed emulating the Souls-like combat experience. With it being kind of a faster pace here, the attacks retain a lot of the impact while feeling less heavy and telegraphed like the more medieval entries in From Software's games. It's definitely different, but I still feel like it's really close to that same style. With that being said, I'm definitely adding Black Myth Wukong to my Souls-likes I am definitely going to play list, along with From Software's entire backlog at that. And now if you'll excuse me, I now have to get through every other insanely good RPG that released this year in 2023, so I can actually hope to get to playing these games before the heat death of the universe. One in particular, I'm hoping to cover on the channel quite soon.